What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Medical Standard Podcast. My name is Zach Hernandez, and as always, I'm with my co-host, Matt Llewellyn. Matt, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, Zach. I've had time to digest the loss that we took. It was a tough one. The season's over. Some things are going to be changing, and that kind of leads today's news right off the bat. Let's jump into it. I guess we're losing Mike McDaniel to the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah. Before we get into that, if you're watching on Twitter, head over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/49ers Hive. Join there so we can see and interact with your comments. If you're saying anything on Twitter, we're not ignoring you. We just cannot see it. Please head over to YouTube, and while you're there, hit like and subscribe. The latest news, Adam Schefter, I believe around like 3 o'clock today, broke the news that Mike McDaniel is going to be a Dolphin. They are in talks, finalizing his negotiation. I'm personally a little surprised, but not as surprised after yesterday when I believe, or Friday, when they reported that they met with 10 hours between him and Dolphins owner Stephen Ross. What do you make of this move, Matt?
Man, first of all, 10 hours for a job interview was a hell of a job interview. I couldn't even imagine what I would, I think it's a little bit different than our typical jobs because obviously he's going to be in charge of, the team. It's the most important aspect. You got to get along with your general manager. You got to get along with your ownership. So that makes sense on that level that they're going to be really kind of palling around at the facility, but still 10 hours is a long time. And it's sad to see him go, but at the same time, there's multiple levels to the whole thing. First of all, congratulations to him for getting a head coaching job. I know that that's something that he's been working towards for a long time. I think Jeff Darlington put out a screenshot of his career goals that he wanted to be a Hall of Fame head coach. So this is the first step towards that path. And for the 49ers, because of, that rule that they instituted that, we don't need to get into the details, but I think it's kind of a weird rule. But the 49ers are going to get 2 third-round picks for the hiring, just like they did last year for Robert Saleh in New York. So it kind of works out in both ways. I think that now we need to look at where the 49ers go for their offensive coordinator from here. And I think that might be something to look at in terms of an internal hire. Maybe this was, with the anticipation that he was going to get this Miami job, maybe that's why they pulled the trigger and brought in Anthony Lynn as well, which we haven't talked about. So I think there was open communication with everybody, and it's interesting to see. And I wish Mike McDaniel all the best of luck, except for that game where they come into Levi Stadium, which I will be at with my wife next year. Good luck every other week of the season, though, Coach.
Yeah, definitely. Crazy 10-hour interview. I can't even imagine. I thought it was funny too. And I say funny lightly because it is with the Brian Flores NFL lawsuit going on. But the Giants were like, we are not going to hire somebody based off of a 20-minute Zoom interview. And the Dolphins are just like 10 hours. 10 hours. Yep. We're going to meet with you. We're going to meet everybody here. We got to make sure we all like you. I respect it. I really do. And I tip my hat, like you said, to Mike McDaniel. He kind of went viral a little bit in the past few weeks for his kind of crazy
the Mike Jones thing was the Mike really Jones. Funny.
His press conferences kind of took off, especially on Twitter. And there were a lot of fans with teams that have had coaching opening wanting Mike McDaniel.
Yeah.
He doesn't call plays for the 49ers. I know he had a strong influence on their running game. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen now that he has full control over the team in Miami. He's got a Tua, which I don't know. Could you argue Tua is better than Jimmy?
I don't think you can make that argument. I think Tua is safer than Jimmy. And I think that Mike has been under the Kyle tree long enough to pick up a lot of those tips on how to get guys open, particularly in the middle of the field. So those are going to be areas where Tua is going to excel. It's just an interesting hire. It's going to be fun to see where it goes. And going back to, what you say about the 10-hour interview process after the whole Brian Flores thing, I think it speaks to, because there were accusations that Stephen Ross offered to pay Brian Flores to lose games. I think Mike McDaniel is a smart enough guy to do his due diligence. And so I think that this is going to kind of indicate what the outcome of that whole thing is going to be in a certain way. I don't think that he would have gone there with the knowledge that, hey, man, my owner is actually going to try to pay me to lose, I don't think that's something in his DNA.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good hire for the Dolphins. And it's cool to see. I mean, this hiring rotation has been a lot of, I mean, other than Doug Peterson, it's been a lot of new blood, and that was something with the Brian Flores thing. Whatever you think of like all the other stuff, we know that there's still issues with hiring process or whatever. But the thing is, it's just like, I mean, you can be mad that you didn't get this job or that job, but the people they're hiring are getting their first crack. It's like he never should have been fired from the Dolphins. I fully believe that. He was doing a great job there. But at the same time, it's like, man, you already had a chance. Let somebody else get a chance too. We always complain about the retread coaching hires, and we finally get some fresh blood in there. And this is just more of the same. Mike McDaniel gets his first shot at a head coaching job, and that Kyle Shanahan, the Mike Shanahan tree is just it's establishing roots all over the league, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah. Everything you just said, I love to see it, but I'm a little concerned with who he's going to take with him. Because we were all thinking, especially a few weeks ago, that DeMeco Ryans would be the coordinator that's plucked to go start a new head coaching spot elsewhere.
Yeah, he pulled himself out.
He did. He definitely pulled himself out, which I love to see because he
shows great self-awareness for him.
Yeah, I want to hone in on my own craft. I've only been doing this for a year. Let me perfect it. But it's going to be interesting to see who McDaniels takes with him. A few people, specifically Mike LaFleur, went with Saleh when he went to New York. I guess we'll have to wait and see who follows McDaniel to Miami.
I really do think that's why Anthony Lynn was hired, because that came out of nowhere. Like nobody was even talking about Anthony Lynn anything. We were really talking about Embry getting fired, and it was like, what was that all about? And there were some weird accusations around that, but I think we can kind of put those to bed. I mean, the Anthony Lynn hire I think is a good one. I thought he did a decent job with the Chargers. I don't think that he was cut out necessarily or prepared in that instance to be a head coach. But as a coordinator, he's been really, really good. And so I'm not upset about that at all. But I mean, Mike McDaniel, you talk about who's leaving. He's not the only coach to leave. The Chicago Bears poached Richard Hightower from us, which means our special teams are just going to get better. Hopefully.
Yeah, it's very, very rare that a good team blocks a lateral move for a position coach. I think that kind of says it all right there. They're like, oh, you want it for the same spot? All right, cool. Go have fun.
Yeah, I think I heard somewhere his contract was up. But if not, then they were kind of like, all right, we're not going to stop you. Yeah. It just kind of indicates where they were with him.
Yeah, some of the comments, Ace versus Lynn is an upgrade, and we get some picks. I love it. Anthony Lynn's a big, big addition. I'm excited to see that. Christian saying, should the Dolphins game be the Hive takeover game?
I'm down.
We should do it. Yeah, let's do it. I know Matt's already going.
We're supposed to go together, Zach.
Yeah, I know. You got to tell me your seats. I haven't even asked, but
I mean, they're not up for sale yet. We don't even know the schedule.
Okay,
yet.
Duh. So once they are, we'll go. Yeah. What's the
Super Bowl's not even over, Zach? We got to get to the new league year.
The year as soon as 0-0 hit last Sunday.
I know you're like 2022. Where are you at?
Yeah, I have the day off after the Super Bowl, but it is what it is. What's your shirt, Zach? Always got a dope one on. This is our Deebo's chain snatching services. This is from probably one of the first shirts we ever made. Ian says, not the safest job, but good luck. Yeah, I was a little interested.
I mean, if you look at it, unless it's like a longtime coach, and even in this instance, like the Saints, Sean Payton retires or whatever, that organization's great, right? Like you can count on the organization, but in terms of teams who fire their coaches, you're typically not going to be looking at a safe job because there's a reason they got rid of their last guy. So, it's one of those things where, he might struggle. The Dolphins have been pretty mediocre for a long time. So you just hope that with a special talent, if he has that potential and that talent, that he can kind of overcome some of that stuff. Tua is going to be the big issue early, I think. That defense is actually really good. Yeah. So on the defensive side of the ball, I think he's set up really well. They've got a lot of talent. Xavier Howard's over there. Byron Jones is over there. They had their the rookie safety this year. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. And then you got the offensive side of the ball. Jalen Waddle caught a ton of passes this year. They got some issues at offensive line. Again, I think that Tua is kind of like just a safe, mediocre, not going to win you too many games type of guy, but you hope he doesn't make mistakes. I think he can make an impact there pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think he can too. And I think the biggest thing of all of this, and we won't stay on this too much longer, guys, but I think the big thing out of all of this is the reports coming out this kind of coaching cycle was that Stephen Ross, the Dolphins owner, wanted somebody committed to working with Tua. So I know I saw a lot of people on Twitter already saying like, oh, Jimmy's going to go to Miami, compete with a shot. I don't really see it. I think Stephen Ross wants a kind of unchallenged Tua is the quarterback one. Mike McDaniel, I'm bringing you in here. I'm paying you. What can I get out of you coaching my quarterback? And he felt he didn't get it with Brian Flores. So
yeah,
we'll see. John V says, I'm concerned how the run game looks moving forward, minus McDaniel and his quote genius input. What do you think, Matt? Is there a reason for concern?
I don't think so. Honestly, I don't think so. Bobby Turner's still there, as far as I know. And like that guy's been the real genius. So in terms of the running game, I think that what they were asking McDaniel to do, working so lockstep with Kyle and being the offensive coordinator when we know Kyle calls all the plays, is really it's the train up for Mike McDaniel to take over a head coaching job. I think he'll like Ian Sharp saying, he should be good for the Dolphins run game, but I don't think that necessarily is going to negatively impact what the 49ers are going to do, because Kyle is still going to run his offense, right? Bobby Turner is still going to coach up those running backs. I think that there's a lot there that the team still can work with. So and honestly, you're looking at a team that, when we get into our season recap, in a lot of ways, with as streaky as they were at the beginning of the season and the way they came on, this was a team that kind of overachieved. So I don't think, if they have positions to fill, I think that they're going to be able to go out and get people that they want to fill those positions without too much trouble. I mean, coaches and players and stuff are going to look at the culture with the 49ers and be like, why wouldn't we want to be there? Yeah. And it's something exciting. You get to work with somebody like Trey Lance, and you got a roster that's built for the playoffs. So I don't think they'll have a hard time replacing that talent. And I think it's a good thing, and speaks to the level of our coaching staff that so many of our coaches have been getting poached lately. It just speaks to what, the job that Kyle has done and the culture that he's set up. And people will talk about his record, this and that. But I mean, the proof is in the pudding. People are hiring these people for a reason, and it's not because Kyle is doing a bad job. So I kind of just, takes the wind out of the sails if you're trying to say that we're going to be losing a ton. I think Kyle's going to be able to fill those positions pretty easily.
Yeah, it really is impressive what kind of has come out of Kyle Shanahan. And I know you just said, the Mike Shanahan as well. It seems like that kind of year in Washington, you could just go down the line, and it's like, whose turn is it to get a head coaching gig? And it really is impressive. But specifically from the Niners, since Kyle has been here, obviously Robert Saleh got some looks. D'Amico Ryan's only 1 year as a DC got some looks. I honestly thought McDaniel was just getting interviews just to be kind of a part of it, maybe getting him ready for next year. I didn't think teams actually had any actual interest in hiring him. Turns out they did. So I respect it, and I do wish him the best. Hung Fat says, everyone's saying Waddle will be used like Deebo. No shot in hell. Everyone wants to be used like Deebo, but he's one of one.
I don't know who's saying that, but they shouldn't be, because Waddle's tiny, dude. Like, he's like 5'9" and like 170 pounds. Yeah. He's not a big dude. So I definitely would not use him as I hate the term wide back, but Deebo's using it, so I'll respect it. But like, there's no way they're going to use him like Deebo. He's not built like Deebo is. I've
actually seen it a handful of times on Twitter already. Oh, expect Jalen Waddle to get a lot of carries. It's like, come on, man. If it was so easy, a lot of players would be doing it already. And it's not even that easy.
Typical fan base galaxy brain stuff where they're, this is why there are only a handful of people that get to be NFL head coaches. Yeah. Too many people think that they know how to do it. They've played too much Madden.
Christian says Flores is smart enough to know Tua sucks. Having to commit to that bump could hurt McDaniel. Well, Flores wanted Herbert, if you believe all the reports.
Yeah.
And ownership fought for Tua. Ian Sharp, any chance Jimmy could go to Miami? We talked about this a little bit ago.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think Ross wants Tua, since he spent the high draft capital on him. He wants somebody to work with him and not bring in another guy to challenge him.
And you take advantage of the rookie cap when you can.
Yeah, definitely. Ace Russ says need to re-sign Mostert to be a rotational back. He'd be a solid running back too.
Only if he's making the vet minimum.
I'm not against that. Yeah.
Which honestly, that's about all he's going to command anyway. He's been injured like much of the last 2 years, so
yeah, he had one good year. One good year.
And honestly, by running back standards, it wasn't even that good.
No, it really is just that kind of.
It was the 2 playoff games.
Yeah, that's what everybody remembers.
He's living off of that. It's kind of like similar, not because the games counted. It's not quite as dumb, but it's really a lot like the Jalen Hurd thing.
Yeah,
where he had that one great game against the Cowboys, and everybody's like, "Man, he's so good." And I'm like, y'all just forget the dude's never rushed for 1,000 yards in a season. Elijah Mitchell in his rookie season had more yards this year than Mostert has ever had in a single season. And Mostert was cut by like 8 teams. So I don't know. He's fast, but you're talking about a dude that's been injured multiple times. He's coming up on his age 30 season. The tread on the tires is going to be bare. And the first thing that's going to go is that speed. And then what do you have?
Yep.
We saw it with Cargo Plane.
Who looks completely new in Kansas City.
Yeah,
which
right.
Is crazy.
Stole money for 2 years.
Yeah. Let's see. David Yates says Hightower got picked up by the Bears. Yep, we covered that a bit. John V. I believe Flores butted heads with the front office more than he may or may not have believed in Tua. Tua's first year was a quarterback carousel with Fitzpatrick.
The story is, though, that they butted heads because he didn't want Tua, that he wanted Herbert instead. Yeah. And that he lost out. And he kind of, if you believe the reports, he kind of took that out on Tua, which if that's true, that's not cool. But,
no.
Yeah.
Let's see. Davian Waddle's a finesse player. No way he could be physical in the backfield. Exactly. I mean, there are very few receivers built like Deebo Samuel. That's why it's so impressive. He's got the running back body, the speed of a receiver. He's a very, very unique player. Ian Sharp said Coleman also contributed in 2019. Was it all Mostert? He did. Yeah. The Carolina game specifically. Trade Kittle this offseason. Maybe send him with Jimmy since lovers love to get more picks.
There was a point in time where I would have said, nah, you're not doing that. You're not doing that. I will be interested to see what comes out of George Kittle this offseason when they move Jimmy and how he reacts and how he carries himself. I'm fully confident that he will be a professional, but in the case that he is opining for Jimmy or being a little bit of a disruption, you might actually look at moving George Kittle because you don't want a disturbed locker room coming in when you're trying to prop up Trey Lance. And that sucks because George Kittle would be immensely difficult to replace. I think that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have a lot of work ahead of them. I think they're going to sit down with George and really kind of go over the situation and really try to get him on board and sell him on the whole thing. And hopefully it's a thing of like, George is like, hey, this is a business. Me and Jimmy are still going to be, boys no matter what. And he continues to be the great teammate that he has been. So it remains to be seen. I could see a scenario where if he became disgruntled, I think you have to move him.
I don't think it'll come to that. I mean, we saw very briefly.
Oh, I don't either. For the record, I'm just kind of like throwing out a scenario.
Yeah. Okay. I hear you. If it would come to that, I agree. I think if he's unhappy, if he's complaining, all of which we've never seen from George. So I don't really think that would suddenly happen. I think the team knows that Jimmy's gone. They had a party in Vegas. I know they have one every offseason. It looks like it was just to celebrate the year. I kind of jokingly tweeted out, it looks like it's a goodbye party, which it kind of did. But I think they all know that that Jimmy's gone after this year. So
I actually know which bar they were at too in Vegas. I've been there. Oh,
really?
It's at the Cosmopolitan. Yeah. I've been there before. They make a nice verbena drink. That's neither here nor there.
Hunk Fast says also 0 fumbles for Mitchell is amazing.
Yeah. That is amazing.
Yep.
Did you see the picture of? I think it was a picture of Jimmy today. It looked like he was maybe in an adult establishment.
I did not. No, I did not see that.
He seems to like those places.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. We got a super chat from Justin Lomker. Kittle the Chargers for a third and guard Matt Filer. I don't know. Is that how you pronounce the last name?
I think you can get more for Kittle than that.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Are you being facetious? Are you joking here? What's going on? Thank you for the super chat. Either way, we appreciate you,
Absolutely.
Justin.
I
John
think we would
Lee's.
get more than that for sure.
Oh, that's shitty. In response to trading him. Kim Farson says,
I think that was in response to Brian Flores treating, because he asked the question.
Okay.
That was in response to Brian Flores wanting Herbert.
Kim says, what separates Deebo is his acceleration. That's unmatched. That's true. I've been watching like a sad boy hooked up to my oxygen copium machine, watching Niners games all off season or all last week, excuse me, the ones that they won, obviously, and just seeing Deebo hit that hole and just completely burst through it and somehow finds his way to the end zone. It really is miraculous to see. People forget Deebo can go deep too. That's all we heard in the offseason. Trey going deep to Deebo. Oh, I'm so excited to see this.
Yeah.
Because if we don't,
I would have said maybe you don't do the wide back thing for too long.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said for chemistry. And we know for a fact that Trey Lance and Brandon Ayuk are boys.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be training in the offseason. I think there's a very real opportunity that Brandon Ayuk's targets shoot up next season.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to get Deebo the ball still. So what do? You put him in motion, you use those run plays or whatever. I just like to see a little more variation. I think it was pretty obvious when Deebo was lined up in the backfield that most like 95% of the time it was going to be a handoff. And I think the one that wasn't was that missed opportunity where I think I can't remember what happened. I think the defense collapsed in on him, but it was one where Deebo came out on almost like a check and release on a wheel route out of the backfield, and it would have been 6. It was in shout outs to QB school with
JT O'Sullivan.
Yes, JT O'Sullivan, who really breaks down things well, and he showed that that could have been 6. But yeah, you want to see all these wide receivers go deep. I mean, it's no wonder when Jimmy hit that deep pass to Brandon Ayuk, we were all shocked.
Yeah,
like that never happens, and
it was a dime too.
To not even be able to run that 3-step drop into a fade route or a streak, that's a staple of taking a shot is a staple in every playbook except ours, apparently.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they definitely can do it. It's just you need the right guy to be able to deliver that ball occasionally.
Yeah. Also, I mean, Kyle Shanahan said it himself. The reason why they even kind of started toying with the idea of lining Deebo up in the backfield is they basically said, how can we get the ball in his hand and eliminate all kind of risk of something going wrong, interception, tip passes. And then they kind of said, why don't we just hand it off to him? And Matt, I think you've said it jokingly. The next thing they could do is just direct snap to Deebo Samuel, just to even eliminate Jimmy fumbling. But
I think it's very telling that they had to do that.
Yep.
How can we limit the mistake of our quarterback? And I think that's a clear indication of why it's going to be Trey Lance's team moving forward. Why they went and got him. It goes beyond the injuries. I don't care what anybody says. We know who homers for Jimmy, who is still doing it to this day and has no self-awareness of his tweets whatsoever.
No, I'm sorry. According to him, he's the only one that's tweeted unbiased reporting from 2017.
Right. Oh my God.
Which is just laughable.
No self-awareness. He's going to be insufferable next year.
Yeah. Did you see Peacock offered both him and Grant to come on his show?
Oh, really?
Yeah, Brian.
I bet you Grant would have done it.
He immediately replied, said, "I'm in. Let me know when." No response from Lombardi yet. Steve says Kittle was hyping Lance.
Do it. He'll get killed.
He won't do it. He was hyping Lance. Kittle was hyping Lance after the touchdowns in the Texas game. He will be fine. I did see that,
and I do think that for the most part, I think Kittle is aware this is a business, and I think for as much as Kittle loves Jimmy from a strictly football perspective, I also think he's aware of the limitations that Jimmy Garoppolo has.
I think if this was his rookie year, then it may be a little different. But who were his best friends the entire time before last season? CJ Beathard and Trent Taylor, both of whom are on different teams this year. I think now help put that into perspective. Okay, I have to separate, obviously, my friendships from the professional side.
Exactly.
Ian says Kittle has to get more touches on offense. Otherwise, what's the point of the big contract? Yeah, it's hard to justify.
Yeah, but at the same time, when you look at his statistics for this year, considering he missed 3 games, they were still really good. He was right around the 1,000-yard mark.
Yeah.
I think he had like
It's like 930 or
pull it
something like
up
that.
just because.
While you're doing that, can I defend his point?
Absolutely.
I think situationally he needs to be more involved.
That definitely, particularly in the red zone, I feel like is definitely a thing that you really want to look at. But regular season, 71 catches for 910 yards and 6 touchdowns. If you give him more opportunity in the red zone, those touchdown numbers can come up. Ideally, you'd like to see him around between 9 and 12. But at the same time, I don't think that he's necessarily not. I mean, you extrapolate 3 more games out of that, and he's well over 1,000 again. So I think that Kittle being so good and Travis Kelce being so good has kind of tainted the tight end position for everybody else. Anybody else with 71 catches for 910 yards and 6 TDs as a tight end, you're like, damn, that dude had a hell of a season. But because it's George Kittle, you're like, he's not touching the ball enough. So I think it's a double-edged sword, right? And the point of the big contract, even if he's not touching the ball, is the dude is a ferocious blocker. And that's huge too. That brings something beyond what Kelce brings, is that he has that 110% do or die blocking mentality where, I mean, we've seen it before where he pancakes somebody and gets up giggling because he's just that type of dude. So I think that there are ways that he can be refined in his utilization. But I think overall, considering he missed 3 games, he had a really good season.
Yeah, overall it was completely solid. Those was it a 3-game stretch, if I remember correctly? Seattle, Cincinnati, I forget. I think there was a
third. We had like 150 yards and like a touchdown in each game.
Yeah, it was insane. He was the first tight end to ever do that. But I agree. Just my earlier point, defending Ian's point. Situationally, playoffs, I think he had 1 touchdown. And granted, Jimmy only threw 1 touchdown, but in the Rams game, in the NFC Championship game, which was a dime,
Jimmy had a particularly bad playoffs.
Historically bad.
Jimmy's playoff numbers are abysmal, to put it mildly.
Yeah, especially in the fourth quarter. But we'll leave that. We're not going to get into it.
Yeah,
it's a very heated topic amongst fans on social media. But yeah, I would like to see just him situationally more involved, especially in the red zone, like you said, Matt. Dusty Gold says Jimmy and Kittle to Miami for a first and a third. He's not going.
Miami would probably do that just for Kittle.
Yeah, I agree. Ian, a good second running back will change Deebo's role. That's fair.
I think it could, only from the fact that I think that would limit a little bit, right? You look at the Rams game and it was Elijah Mitchell or it was Deebo Samuel and nobody else. Yeah. All of a sudden, Trey Sermon and Jeff Wilson Jr. didn't exist on this team. So I think that they need to utilize Deebo a little more sparingly out of the backfield too. Unless, like I said, you're going to add some wheel routes or, some check and release or some decoy type plays that you can get him open for the passing game. Because I think that I don't think you should ever just straight hand the ball off to Deebo.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, they almost never didn't hand it off to him when he was lined up.
Right. When he lined up in the backfield, it was like, all right, they're giving him the ball.
It was clear as day.
And that's what hurt them in the Rams game.
Yep.
Deebo rushing the ball was not effective. He got his touchdown because he went in motion and they threw him a screen pass and he was able to get out in space. Again, he works so well in space. When you're handing him the ball between the tackles from a set position in the backfield, you're actually running him into bodies, and he needs to have that space to work with. And he's not going to shy away from contact, but give the man a little bit of room to work with. It's so if they can avoid just straight up, zone reads inside or handoffs inside to him or whatever, and you can utilize motion and a little bit of trickery to still get him in those maximized positions, then I think that'll be better for him.
I'm really excited to see what he can do with Trey Lance. There's so much potential there. Oh, sorry. Joey, forget to read his comment. He said, I'm fine with the wide back thing if it's not always super wide zone or that inside pitch.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And by the way, guys, don't be surprised. I know that, he's going to get a bad rap and people are already off the train of Trey Sermon, but I would not write him off yet. I've always maintained that Trey Sermon pairs better with Trey Lance than he does with Jimmy Garoppolo, because if you are going to use Trey Lance in certain RPO plays then you want Sermon, who is good at running between the tackles to get the ball. Whereas Elijah Mitchell works better closer to the edge on those outside zone runs or the counter plays. He's better at those.
Yeah.
But I've always thought that Sermon pairs better with Lance.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that was kind of the plan. Also, real quick, and then we'll move on. The 49ers, unbelievable move to look ahead and say, we're not committed to Jimmy past this year. Next year's draft class is complete shit. Let's get a quarterback right now, pay the premium, and just storm for a year. And then once we get into next season, we have our quarterback. I mean, it's just galaxy brain, literal galaxy brain type stuff, not kind of the insulting way that it's normally said. Because teams don't usually operate like that. So it is cool to see.
Right.
Tommy Huxley says David Lombardi. Yes, David Lombardi. Just riding Jimmy. Hunk Fat. Trey won't be afraid to throw to Kittle. LOL.
Definitely not.
Or to anyone for that matter. Man, those passes in Green Bay still haunt me. Those check down passes that just hung in the air for a solid 2 minutes.
Or the interception when Jimmy tried to throw to Kittle.
Yeah. Deebo, the first wide receiver to ever go 1,500 receiving yards and 500 rushing, one of one. Yeah.
Wild and he's second all time for scrimmage yards for the 49ers.
Also, the first ever rush for 8 touchdowns, I believe, was the number, right? Yeah. Dusty Gold said Pep Hamilton will improve passing offense over passing assistant Bobby Slowick.
I'm not against Pep Hamilton. It's just going to be interesting to see what they do because I think they literally hired Anthony Lynn to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And you said it earlier. I think the communication was there. I think McDaniel probably went to Kyle and said, I'm probably going to get the job. I think I'm going to get the job. We're kind of negotiating terms. And then Kyle went out and found Anthony Lynn, who I think is a fantastic hire. I said in the chat the other day, I think anytime you can add former head coaches for assistant or positional roles, it's usually a good sign because somebody thought of him as a great person to hire him as a head coach. So Ace says, don't re-sign Tart, Aziz, and Brunskill. Sign Tyrod Matthew. He can play Sot, strong, and free. Plus, we need playmakers on D and sign Lake at guard.
I'm good. I have no desire to sign Tyrann Mathieu.
Not at this stage.
He's undersized. He's old. He's injury prone, and he's probably going to cost too much. No, thank you.
Yeah, I'd rather take the 3 over Tyrann.
I'd rather take those 3 over Tyrann Mathieu any day of the week.
But I agree. Definitely need to re-sign Laken Tomlinson. That's a key to me. Christian says Lance should be able to get the ball to Kittle. Jimmy's weak arm and inaccuracy hurt Kittle, which is weird. Why he always defended him. I think earlier in his career with Jimmy Garoppolo, it wasn't an issue, and he was able to get the ball to him because it was safe and over the middle.
People act like that Kittle was Jimmy's favorite target and don't realize that his record-setting season wasn't with Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's right. It was with Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard.
And C.J. Beathard, yeah.
Yep. Jimmy isn't going to Miami. Stop it, Steve says.
Yeah.
He's not. Yeah. Jimmy G-string greater than the Padres.
Dang. Tommy Huxley already in here. Listen, Tommy Huxley, you're like that close from a 5-minute timeout.
David Yanks says
honestly, I just need baseball to get their shit together so we can have a season on time. That's all I really care about.
I know. Is there a strike or something going on? What's
lockout?
Oh, really?
Yeah, the CBA expired, so they're working on something new.
Damn, I hate that.
They can't afford to have a work stoppage. It's not like that bleeds into the season. They can't afford to be missing games. They need to put butts in seats. It's one of the few things left that that not a lot of people are scared to do because most baseball venues are outdoors. So like people are cool, doing it. And
it's a good point. Yeah.
And after 2020, when baseball doesn't make the type of money that the NFL and the NBA does, that like they desperately need to not have this bleed into there. But anyway, that's baseball. We'll get there eventually.
David Yates says Deebo almost always cut back too when he gets the ball in backfield. Easy to game plan for. Yeah.
And we saw that with the Rams. They knew exactly whenever Deebo lined up, it was like they knew what was coming. Deebo was not effective running the ball against the Rams at all.
Steve says, I forgot where I heard it, but I heard Sherman was in the doghouse the way Ayuk was, didn't practice the way Kyle wanted him to, so they kept him inactive. I
heard that too. I think it's just young players needing to realize. And Ayuk was able to kind of work his way out of it. He's teaching how to be a pro. A rookie in the 3rd round is not going to get the same leeway that a second-year player that was drafted in the 1st round is going to get. So I think that's why Ayuk was able to work back so quickly. So yeah, it's one of those things where you hope that he can make it back, but I still believe that he was drafted as a supplement to Trey Lance.
I agree. And the same with like kind of Aaron Banks too. That type of pick, I think you've said it, as soon as they drafted him, it fits more with the style of offense that they want to run with Trey Lance. So I'm excited to see what they can do. I think there's a lot to look forward to next season. Let's see. David Yank says, should we offer a late pick for Minshew? His base is only around 2.5 million. Would you like Gardner Minshew as a backup?
No. There's other guys that I would go with over him that fit Lance's skill set better. Minshew's not a mobile quarterback, regardless of what people think. He's not really that guy. He's really small. I think that, if you could pry him away from Denver, I always said that Drew Lock would be an interesting project to back up Trey Lance. But realistically, if you really want a guy, and, not a lot of people are going to want to hear this, but a backup that would fit Lance's skill set and that probably wouldn't cost a ton is Mitchell Trubisky.
Wow. I honestly, I agree with you, but I think Mitchell's going to try to go somewhere where the chance to start.
I think he has no chance to start anywhere.
I don't think he does, but I think from his standpoint, the way I saw his signing in Buffalo was kind of let the market cool for a year. The draft class is going to be shit probably. Let me come out and see what I got. I don't know. That's just kind of how I read the whole situation. I know our chat was saying Tyrod Taylor. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. Just leave that doctor in LA that stabbed him in the lung. Itchy 95 said Trey's going to be so awesome with experience. He needs to learn to trust the reads. Yeah, and kind of not miss high when he misses, because those turn into picks. Okay, this is what we can get into. Steve says Joe Judge should be next as special teams coach. So right now, kind of the internet's undecided between Rich Bisaccia and Joe Judge. If you had the choice at special teams, I mean, how much does it impact the team? That remains to be seen. Who would you take out of the two if you have a decision?
I mean, I would take Bisaccia, but I don't think that he's within reach. He's not going to be hired as a special teams coach. Like, he's not going to. I mean, he was an interim head coach and did a good job getting the Raiders to the playoffs. He's not gonna be content with going back down to a special teams coach. I don't really think Joe Judge is either, but Joe Judge had a really turbulent time in New York. So it's a little bit more of the dog between, with your tail tucked between your legs, rather than Rich Bisaccia, who can hold his head up high and was like, I feel like I did a really good job. Bisaccia was interviewing for the head coaching job, the permanent head coaching job with the Raiders. So that says what they felt, about him. I don't think he's going to be a special teams coach. Tommy Huxley, money talks, my friend. Money talks. And as they get closer to the season, neither side, they're fighting over money. If neither side gets it together, they're not going to have any money to fight over. Baseball's already hard enough. You need to get all these new stars like Tatis and, whoever Tatis. No, but like Tatis and Shohei Ohtani and Vladdy Jr. and, Ronald Acuna. And like, they have this great stable of young stars. So they need to get them out on the field.
I agree with Matt said. I don't know anything about baseball. So Ian Sharp says Sermon had a few injuries as well. That concussion was one of the most unfortunate injuries.
Yeah. And then he had that nasty ankle sprain too.
Yeah.
But those are like ding up injuries. Those are not really like, it's not like one of those things like Jason Verrett has like a horrible injury history.
Yeah. Before we move on from the special teams debate or discussion, I should say, players loved Rich Bisaccia. Derek Carr, Max Cosby were coming out and, full saying, I want Rich Bisaccia. The ownership knows who we want as our head coach. They ultimately went with Josh McDaniels, but Rich Bisaccia is loved by his players. That definitely says something. I've yet to hear anybody come out from the Giants talking about Joe Judge. Not that they should. It was a trash team, trash season, but still. Josh Hutchins says Tyrod Taylor is back up.
Washed.
I mean, you're backing up.
Yeah, but he's not even mobile. Again, you want a guy that fits Lance's skill set. Tyrod Taylor's not mobile anymore. He's like 34 years old, man. Like he's like come on.
The career backup.
Like who else said it? I think Christian said it. Mariota.
Isn't he
Mariota would be a guy. I think Mariota's going to be too expensive, and I think Mariota's a guy who, if you really realistically look at somebody who would have a shot at being like a bridge starter over Trubisky, I think it's Mariota.
That's a good, I agree with that.
There's less recent stink, everybody realizes what Mitch Trubisky is. He was just the starter for the Bears last season. So, although I will say this, after watching how badly Justin Fields performed this year, Mitch Trubisky doesn't look that bad.
No, he doesn't. No, he does not. Renzo says we are in win now mode. Players' contracts are going to hit hard in the next 2 years.
Not that hard.
I think it'll be fine, but we can talk about contracts in the sense that
we will.
People are saying Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, and we've had this discussion kind of internally.
Nick Bosa's new money won't hit until like 2025, 2024.
Yeah. Can you share like kind of the reasoning behind they can sign Deebo this year and Nick Bosa next year?
So Deebo was a second round pick. He doesn't have the 5th year option, so they're going to have to extend him or put him under the franchise tag. Nick Bosa is going to be in year 4 next season. They're almost certainly going to pick up his 5th year option, because I think as it stands right now, it's $17.5 million, and his new contract's going to be way more than that. So you let him play through this year, you pick up his 5th year, and in that last year of, after the offseason of the 4th year, you can start working on an extension, even though he's going to be under that 5th year, and then new money wouldn't even hit until a 3rd year after that. So we're 3 years out. His new money wouldn't even hit until 2024. So like it's not going to be prohibitively expensive. Initially, Deebo's going to be one, but then by the time you're signing Nick Bosa, then you're looking at the end of George Kittle's contract where he's going to be like 33, and then you're really looking at, all right, do we bring him back or whatever? D Ford is going to be off the books. Eric Armstead is going to be off the books. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be off the books. The salary cap is, I'm not going to say it's not real, but it's much more flexible than people give credit for, and I would not worry about not being able to sign the core players on this team for the next however many years. The real big one that hurts is when you have Nick Bosa freshly signed with that new money in 2024, and now you're like, oh crap, Trey Lance is hit, so now we got to look at, now we have a premier defensive end and a premier quarterback to pay, and that's when you start getting into those funky cap issues. But that's so many years away. This team is still, they're still in a good spot, particularly with the new TV money, the salary cap going back up. They're going to be fine.
Yeah, and look, like you said, Bosa has the 5th year option. You got to take advantage of it. You really do, and contractually, financially, the team needs to kind of work around all these things. Why not take it into advantage and use it? I agree with you. Ian says prefer Trubisky to Tyrod Taylor, who gets injured a lot.
Right,
yeah, he does seem to get injured a lot.
Dude, Trubisky, for as much as he got hit, never seemed to get hurt.
No, he just got right
back
up.
Even when he like sprained his like shoulder or whatever, it was his non-throwing shoulder, and he missed like 1 game.
Yeah.
So,
Dusty Gold says Sermon didn't have the speed that Mitchell has. Aaron Banks is another question. We'll have to see them in their 2nd year.
Yeah, but if you're running RPO with Sermon, he doesn't have to have speed, because if you're running him between the tackles, and Trey Lance is deciding, do I give the ball between the tackles, or if the lineman crashes, I take it on a zone read outside. That's a different skill set than what Mitchell has, and it's not necessarily about speed.
Right. Luke W says, I say we get Rich. He's more of a player's coach, fits our culture better than Judge. It might not be up to the Niners though. Rich Bisaccia likely has. I saw that the Packers, I believe, were interviewing him for the same position, special teams coach. We'll see. I think he could get probably a better job out there. Tommy Huxley with the super chat. Thank you. He says low tower is gone. I get the bubbly Giants greater than the Padres.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tommy Huxley's just trying to instigate, I guess. I don't know, that's weird.
Bears signed Hightower. Yep, they did. I think the secondary needs to be the first pick this year. Sign a free agent edge rusher.
I think we're so deep at defensive line. Does anybody really think that pass rush was our problem this year?
I missed this one. Did the Niners draft a receiver? Tired of people saying edge with the first pick. Yeah, I'm sick of it. I am sick of it.
They're not going to draft an edge with their first pick this year. They need to draft in the secondary or interior offensive line, and anything else is a wasted pick, unless some premier dude for whatever reason slides.
Especially
right, and then you go best player available.
Yeah, when they finally get production outside of Nick Bosa, and it's not from an injured D Ford who plays 4 games of the year or whatever the hell. No, stick with that. You finally got that looking good. Now let's address the other holes this team has,
Right.
particularly in defense.
I mean, Ebukam played well. Arden Key played well. Your interior guys played well. I mean, they finally put Eric Armstead inside, and he flourished inside.
Yeah.
Nick Bosa had 15 and a half sacks. Like, at some point or another, stop. It's like a dude who goes to the gym that has great biceps and works on great biceps. Get your skinny legs up to par. Don't skip leg day, right? This secondary is a weakness. The interior offensive line is a weakness. Alex Mack is going to be a year older, and I saw him get bullied around the same way when last year when McGlinchey was Slim Mike, that he was getting knocked on his ass. I saw a ton of time. And I don't even have to point out the play in the Rams where everybody pulled into each other, right? There are definitely issues to be had, and you don't keep pouring resources into a position of strength. It's good enough. Defensive line is good enough. You have an absolute stud. You have a really good veteran in Eric Armstead, and then you have a bunch of rotational pieces that go 10 deep. You need nothing else. Miss me with that edge bullshit.
Yeah, it frustrates me so much every time I see it on Twitter, and it gets like a ridiculous amount of likes
weird.
or whatever.
It's weird.
Like, this fan base's infatuation with edge rushers it's
crazy because
wild.
teams have shown if your secondary sucks, even if you have a great pass rush, guess what? We're gonna get the ball out quickly in space.
Yes,
and then good luck. I mean, Guppy giving up slot fades. Guys playing too far off. Josh Norman grabbing people all left and right. Like, if you get good corners, that negates the ability to be able to just get the ball out quickly. It mitigates a lot of that risk. And then guess what? When you can't get the ball out quickly and the quarterback actually has to work through progressions and the wide receivers have to actually run a real route tree, that's when your pass rush gets home even more than it did this last season. So you need to definitely shore up that secondary. That's definitely what they need the most.
Yeah. Steve says McGlinchey off the books.
This was his fifth year, right? He's a free agent, right?
Yep, he is, yeah.
Salary cap will go up. Cut, they're not going to bring him back. They're going to let him walk.
I don't think so. They'll be fine money-wise when it comes to Deebo and Bosa.
Yeah.
I agree.
Bosa's going to get like $30 million a year, though.
It's going to be crazy.
Bosa's going to get he's going to get like a 5-year deal worth like $155 or something crazy like that.
Yeah, I could see it. Imagine being his dad, 2 sons that are like star players in the NFL.
Yeah.
That family's set. It really is insane. Josh Hudson says Williams needs to be replaced at slot. That's where they need a draft, I think. They will have to compete with Kupp and Beckham, and Woods will be back next year too. Need speed and skill. I agree. Yeah. And I said this earlier on Twitter. Why continually address the defensive line when you play in a division with DeAndre Hopkins, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, OBJ? It's insane the talent at receiver this division has, and the 49ers have consistently neglected their secondary. I mean, last year for the first time we saw Ambry Thomas and Deommodore Lenoir. Thomas looks promising, but even that's not a sure thing. They need to address it the way they've addressed the defensive line for the past decade, it seems like. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. We all thought after his rookie season that Ahkello Witherspoon was like, oh, shit, we got a guy, right? And then he just kind of stalled in his development. So development's going to be really important. You never know if a guy's going to take a leap. I would say don't limit yourself just to, we have to pick a slot. I would pick the best cornerback available because I think that there's some wiggle room. I think that you could, in the slot where, you might want to press somebody, maybe you move Thomas inside. Maybe you move Emmanuel Mosley inside. There are different ways to kind of utilize different players, but I think you got to take the best person at that position that you feel really strongly about, even if they're not a slot per se.
Yeah, I agree. Ace Patricia, the Niners signed Patterson to have another weapon.
They got
How
enough.
old is he? Yeah,
they got enough.
At some point, it becomes too many mouths to feed. I mean, Deebo, Ayuk.
And you're asking a lot of a rookie quarterback too.
Yeah.
Because then every week it's going to be, hey, a second-year quarterback, but every week it's going to be, hey, what about me? Hey, what about me? Hey, what about me? Yeah. Right? Like at some point or another, I mean, you have Mitchell, you have Deebo, you have Kittle, you have Brandon Ayuk, you have Juwan Jennings who's come on as a third guy. Trey Lance is going to be, keeping some keepers for himself and doing some quarterback runs. At a certain point, you got to be like, all right, who else can we actually get the ball to? Or is this enough?
Yeah. Steve says, can't have too many edge rushers. Wouldn't mind getting one in the third. You can have too many edge rushers.
You can. They
You
run
can.
10 deep. They ran so deep at one point when nobody was injured. I think it was Maurice Hurst was a
Yeah.
healthy scratch.
He's
Because
been
they had
healthy
too many
scratches
guys.
for the last like 6 weeks of the year.
Right.
You
You can have too many edge rushers for sure.
You can't have too many cornerbacks, especially with the way they go down like flies on this team.
Yeah.
You need solid depth at the corner spot. Josh says, I'm not sold on Demo. Get secondary depth. Yeah, he didn't show any.
First things first, they have to just wave goodbye to Jason Verrett. You cannot count on that guy. I know he had a great 2019 season for us, but he's just not a guy that you can count on.
Yeah.
And I know he was relatively healthy for 2020, I believe, too. The one guy, right? You were just like, Jason Verrett didn't get injured. What the hell? And then when we're poised to make a breakout, it's like the first game of the season on a non-contact, he tears another ACL. It's just like lower body injuries are killing this dude. So
it really was insane. And that 2020 was kind of the proof as to why the 49ers felt like they could sign him for another prove-it year. Luckily, it was just a 1-year deal, though. Luckily, it wasn't like, okay, here's a 3-year, $30 million. No, it was like, okay, do it again. And he couldn't. So, yep. Ian Tripp's safety and center. Yeah. The way Alex,
I actually would say I would prioritize corner over safety. Safety is a less premium position than corner, and they really need corners. If they were to maintain the status quo of Ward and Tart, but get either sign or draft or both a really good cornerback, I think that would actually make more of an impact than if they did the opposite.
So I forget, are both Ward and Tart free agents?
I don't think Ward is. I think he signed I don't know, to be honest. I'd have to check. Tart, I know, is on a 1-year deal. I thought Ward still had more on his contract, but I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, like I know Tart for sure. Tommy Huck says, I agree, Matt. We definitely need interior O-line. Yep. The way they got abused was just insane. Good corner play was a huge factor in beating Green Bay, says Christian.
Yeah.
Steve says interior O-line, edge, wide receiver should be priorities. So corner's not even a priority for Steve. He says you can find one in free agency.
So Jimmy Ward is under contract for this season.
Okay.
And he's not going anywhere. He has a $9 million dead cap hit, so he's on the books for 12. But I mean, he played really well, so I'm not worried about that.
Can real quick while we're talking about dead cap, did you know Ryan Tannehill has like a $50 million dead cap this year? It's wild. Yeah. Ryan Tannehill.
Matt Ryan's almost 60.
Jesus, man.
Yeah.
These teams.
That's why I say like the real issue is going to be when you re-sign Nick Bosa and Trey Lance hits, then you're like, shit, we got to sign Trey Lance, because quarterbacks always carry the most dead money. It's just how it is.
Yep. Luke says, wish we would have drafted Creed Humphrey to take over at center. He was ours to take in round 2 and 3. Turned out to be a Pro Bowler. This is for you, Matt. This is for you.
I thought we should have taken him at the end of round 1. Yeah. That's what I said. But
all off season, if you guys go back and watch our draft shows,
yeah,
Matt was singing Creed Humphrey from every canyon top.
Right. Before we traded up for Lance, I was like, they can use the supplement picks from Robert Saleh and trade back into the first round and grab Creed Humphrey at the end of it, because he was just a dog at Oklahoma. He just mauled people. So yeah, I preach.
Brandon, so would you guys rather draft a corner or sign a veteran from free agency?
They need to make that determination if they're going to go corner early. If they're not going to go corner early, then I think you sign the free agent and then maybe like draft a mid-round guy. But somebody like a J.C. Jackson, if he gets out of New England or whatever, there are people out there. You just got to worry because corners typically command a decent chunk of money. So it's just going to be what their cap situation looks like. There's a lot to do. I know that they're probably going to try to get out from under the D Ford contract. They're going to try to do a lot of things. So once the dominoes start falling and we know what the cap situation looks like, that's really going to inform what they can do.
Yeah. JC, if they can make one splash signing, it would be JC Jackson to me. But I don't know if they can. I really don't. He might get tagged. Josh says definitely need a center and a right guard.
Yeah.
Mosley can play slot. Yeah, man. Mac's not going to be around long. That's for sure. He was looking rough towards the end of this year.
He's 36.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so Steve,
showed.
I'm gonna address Steve. So I know Hurst plays the interior, but they don't differentiate between edges and interior on their depth chart in terms of like how many guys they dress. They do it particularly by defensive linemen, and they dress like 10. Yeah. That's a lot.
Tommy says, I think first pick should be right side of the line, either guard of tackle, Brunskill, McGlinchey, ain't it? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you can't take the risk that like Tom Compton is going to ball out like he did this last year. Don't do that.
I mean,
they got a lot to work on.
Very specific situations. Compton balled out. He was good in like the running game, but passing sometimes most of the time he got just manhandled. We got a super chat from Hunk Fat. Great show, guys. Next year is going to be huge for us 49ers fans.
Absolutely. And we're going to keep it real. Like we're going to keep it going throughout the offseason too. I know that we're going to, keep bringing you nuggets as they come out. I mean, the Super Bowl's next weekend, but like not too far away after that, you have the draft combine. We really get to dive into some of these draft picks. It looks like overall like a really weak draft class, but it's still going to be fun to kind of take a look. And then at the beginning of March, you're looking at the new league year. There's going to be all the drama with Jimmy Garoppolo. Where's he going to go? Are they going to trade him and get compensation before the draft? Will they cut him? Do they wait till after the draft to trade him to avoid any, some cap implications? There's a ton there that they can actually do. So we're gonna keep it coming for you guys.
Yeah, and as far as the schedule, I think we're going to keep it at one show a week, probably during the weekend.
Yeah.
And we bump it up to 2 during the season. Obviously, we do a preview show, a recap show, but since there's no games, we will be bringing you one show a week. While we're speaking of the Super Bowl, though, we got to take a second to thank our sponsors. Starting off with MyBookie. Let me get rid of this damn screen. Share this other one. Man, I'm ready for the Super Bowl. I know it's going to be not the 49ers, but that's all right. So, guys, shout out to MyBookie for sponsoring today's show. Your team, just like our team, if you're watching us, not a 49ers fan, might have missed out on the big game this year, but MyBookie's double deposit bonus, make sure you do not. Sign up at MyBookie.AG now. Use promo code Hive. You can get your first deposit matched all the way up to $1,000, 100%, so you can get in on all the action of Super Bowl 56. The only way watching the biggest game of the year could get any better is to get paid doing it. And MyBookie gives you everything you need to do it. With double your money, you can double your winnings. And the best starting point for the big game is with Super Bowl prop bets. Whether it's on or off the field, there's no shortage of wagers to choose from for the Super Bowl. So get on the action, let the confetti fall, and walk away a winner. Don't miss out. Head to MyBookie.ag and double your first deposit all the way up to $1,000 by using promo code Hive as in HIVE. Place your bets and get ready for the unmatched excitement of the Super Bowl. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. Shout out to MyBookie. So as you guys see on the screen, if you go to MyBookie.ag, sign up with promo code Hive, then you go live betting, click on the NFL, and 102 props to choose from for the Super Bowl, which is just wild. I've placed my bets already. I've taken the Bengals. I got a couple prop bets in there as well. Go check those out, guys. It's going to be a fun Super Bowl. Stress-free since, the Niners aren't playing.
So, right.
Shout out to MyBookie for sponsoring the show. Thank you very much. Matt, any closing remarks here before we close things out?
I mean, actually, I just want to do we should hop into the thing that we were going to do in this episode, which was recap the season.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then do our offensive and defensive MVPs for the season. But yeah, I mean, listen, go place your prop bets, go watch the Super Bowl. I have to work. I know people are really excited about the halftime show. I'm not because I don't like the people in it, just because I feel like it's going to be that one time you got the Tupac record from your grandma, right? But she went to Walmart to get it, so it didn't have any curse words in it. That's what it's going to be like. And nobody likes the non-curse word version, right?
Yeah.
Where instead of saying the right words, they say stuff like mother, father, and stuff like that. No, you don't want to hear all that. Everything's going to be bleeped, or they're going to make stuff up. So Not really for me. I've never really been into Super Bowl halftime shows. They're just kind of gimped versions of what everybody actually likes. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, let's recap the season, man. Overall, for me, I thought they got off to a really rough start, and it looked like it might like everybody was going to be on the hot seat, right? Like Shanahan and everybody, but they pulled together. And overall, I think this was a solid B+ season. I think they exceeded expectations a little bit, especially for me because I said before the season, this is not a Super Bowl roster. Don't expect them to make the Super Bowl. And then they almost did. So I was pleasantly surprised in a lot of areas, but then those same frustrations came about. So I think for an NFC Championship team going forward, I think this is going to be one of the biggest types of changes that we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of roster turnover. We've already seen a lot of coaching turnover. It's going to be really interesting, but I feel overall this was a great season for the 49ers.
I agree. I know going into the championship game, everyone was saying, 3-5, nobody expected the 49ers to be here. We really didn't. We really didn't. It was tough. They started off obviously winning in Detroit. That was a huge win, but immediately suffered losses. Like you said earlier, with Jason Verrett going down, Raheem Mostert going down, Dre Greenlaw going down, big losses.
And it changed the complexion of the game, right? It was a blowout the whole way, but then we started suffering some injuries, and then they got those weird points, onside kick and all that stuff, and it was just like, what is happening? And it kind of took the luster off of that win for sure.
Yeah, and it came down to the last possession. The 49ers had to get a stop. Steve saying non-49ers news, Alvin Kamara was arrested today after the Pro Bowl. I saw that. That was very interesting. We'll wait and see what comes up with that.
Yep.
And then, after that, the Niners went on the road to Philly, and basically Deebo Samuel beat Philadelphia Eagles with that one long catch and run, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Right before halftime. And then Juwan Jennings was hit for the touchdown, if I'm remembering correctly. I might not be. But yeah, that was a tough game. 17-13, defense, or 17-11, excuse me. Kind of defensive showdown. It was what it was. The 49ers left that game 2-0 for their home opener, and they faced the Green Bay Packers. And this is the first time we saw the red 94 throwbacks. This was a tough game. This is where that infamous Jimmy fumble came from, where he's spinning around and just kind of, yeah. So that was tough. But the 49ers, man, I thought for sure won this game. Jimmy drove the 49ers down with a minute left, and he hit Juszczyk for a touchdown to go up, I believe, 28-27 with 38 seconds left.
Yep. Too much time for Rodgers.
Too much time for Aaron Rodgers. He quickly diced up the defense, drove the ball down the field, hitting Devontae Adams. And Mason Crosby came out and did what he's done a bunch of times. Hit a game-winning field goal. The 49ers lose that one. First loss of the year, 30-28. And then it's Seattle week, which is always tough. This one's at the 49ers. It's still in Santa Clara. This is a tough game as well. Jimmy Garoppolo, if I remember correctly, gets injured late in the first half. Doesn't come back out, I think, at halftime because the offense was completely stagnant. And also, I'm remembering correctly, the defense had 5 straight 3-and-outs for the Seahawks, in which the offense did absolutely nothing with. Trey Lance did supplant Jimmy in the end of this game. Made it a little exciting, got a touchdown, and I believe he almost scored another one to tie it up, but it ended up not happening, and they lost 28-21, falling to 2-2. And then they went on the road to Arizona. And this was the first time Trey Lance got a start because of Jimmy Garoppolo's injury. And this was kind of the game that everybody was completely puzzled with the use of Trey Lance. Do you remember that, Matt?
Yeah. That was the beginning of his kind of funks. With the play calling and really, the first, against Detroit, even as recently as the game against, he had to come in for Seattle, but when the 49ers were down in the first half to Green Bay, near the end of the half, he brought in Trey Lance, and Trey Lance ran that keeper into the end zone for a touchdown. It seemed like Kyle was actively working to get him involved, but the Arizona game was really, the game that kind of showed. I don't know that Kyle is ready for this. He ran the game in a way where it was just so many just designed quarterback runs where it was pretty obvious he's just like, I don't know, he's athletic, let him go out there and run, rather than trying to maximize what Trey did well. And I think it was kind of a blemish. And we started getting to the point because this was I believe this was the third loss in a row where it's just like, all right, I don't know, man. Is Kyle running out of juice here? Like, is he serious questions about Kyle started coming in, and I think it kind of led to this, and it really turned into, when Jimmy came back, a situation where they just didn't use Trey Lance anymore. He didn't see the field again until he made his second start against the Texans.
It was tough, man. And just kind of evidence of that, Trey Lance led the 49ers in rushing in that Cardinals game with 16 carries for 89 yards, which was just wild. We later found out, at least according to the Niners, that it was because Trey Lance had an injured finger and couldn't really throw the ball. Believe it if you want. The 49ers have kind of been weird with injuries, especially at the quarterback position this whole time. But yeah, and even with all that said, a couple of boneheaded fourth down decisions to go for it kind of cost the 49ers this game, and they ended up losing 10-17. It was a close one, though.
Right. And honestly, I think that made him more gun shy on fourth down for the rest of the season. Case in point, 4th and 2 in Rams territory where he doesn't go for it.
Yeah, definitely. It was really weird. Joey says here we went for it on 4th an unusual amount of Cardinals game.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but that's kind of what Kyle decided to do. And it bit him. I think they were like 0 for 4 that game or something like that.
Yeah.
0 for 5. It was really wild. And then the game after that, they had the bye week after that. And this is kind of the game that all of us had kind of circled in the preseason as when Trey Lance would replace Jimmy Garoppolo as the starter.
Yeah.
And it was the home game against the Colts. And looking back on it,
we got whooped.
He should have replaced him as the starter because that was an ugly game, man. That was the game in the vortex, solar monsoon, whatever the hell people were calling it here. It was just a storm. It really was just a storm, but people here in Northern California aren't really used to those, so they had some fancy word for it. They got whooped 30-18 at home. It to be honest, it kind of pulled away at the end. It was closer for most of the game. But man, that was a tough game. Jimmy Garoppolo finished 16 of 27, 181 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks with a quarterback rating of 9. Single digits, which is just wonderful.
Like his playoff QB quarterback rating in the 4th quarter.
That's exactly it. And it started off good for the Niners too. Started off 9-0.
Yeah.
And then even going into the half, going into the second quarter, 12-7, but quickly went away for them. Like I said.
Oh, we lost Zach. All right. Well, I can't really change this, so let me lean to a side. So bar's not in. Oh, there he is.
I hit back on the wrong page, and I was trying to back out on ESPN. It backed out on StreamYard.
Oh no.
Yeah, Itchy 95, atmospheric river. That's what they were calling it. That's right. Yeah.
The funny thing is, every time Jimmy plays in rain, he throws a football like it's a medicine ball. It just dives.
Yeah.
So bad.
It's wild. But they got the season back on track the next week in Chicago, where we saw Justin Fields against Jimmy Garoppolo. And
I actually don't think this was the season back on track game.
No, you're right. It wasn't.
This was they beat up a bad Bears team that was transitioning Justin Fields into a role, and the 49ers were able to take advantage of Justin Fields. And really, they put up a lot of points, but giving up that many points to a Justin Fields led offense, it's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, that's cool. But they, you think Justin Fields, you have to limit him in all aspects of the game. They gave up 100 yards rushing to him and a touchdown. So there were still some issues there. And I don't think that it was, and we're going to talk about them coming up, I don't think it was until that first Rams game where we really got the season back on track.
Right. Yeah. They put up 33. They won by 11. But up until basically 14-11 left in the 4th quarter, it was a 1-score game. So it was a lot closer than the final score will make you think. But then the next week, this game pissed me off because I went to
this game was the rock. I thought this was the worst game of the season for the 49ers up until we'll talk about the Tennessee game. But this was an inexcusable. I mean, they had no Kyler Murray. It was Colt McCoy starting, no DeAndre Hopkins. And they lose this game by 2 touchdowns.
Yep. I went to this game. I spent my hard-earned money going to this damn game. They got their ass whooped.
This was a home game.
Colt McCoy finished 22 of 26, 249 yards, and a touchdown. While Jimmy, on the other hand, was 28 for 40, 326 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was sacked 5 times. Elijah Mitchell finished as the leading rusher with 8 carries for 36 yards. That's just sad. Meanwhile, James Conner had 21 carries for 96 yards for the Cardinals. Christian Kirk had 6 receptions for 91 yards. James Conner had 5 receptions for 77 yards. I mean, this game was just horrible all around. And yes, I agree. This was the rock bottom for the 49ers. This is where everything kind of came out and all the fans were like, this is a shit season. Clearly, they're not making the playoffs. I'm done with
team.
This
and this is where I told Dylan that I was like, they're not making the playoffs, man. Because it was just such a horrible loss. And I thought as a whole, the team really played poorly.
Yeah, they did all around. There was no excuse for them to lose this game.
This was the worst team game. Yeah. It's not the worst loss of the season to me, though.
Yeah. So then the next week is the game that everyone agrees was the game that got the season back on track. And this was funny because we all heard all year, this is week 6, I think at this point, week 7, the Rams are hot. The Rams have Matt Stafford. They had just traded for Von Miller and acquired OBJ as a free agent. It was wild, right? Well, the 49ers come out and put the whooping on them, 31-10. Start immediately with a Jimmy Ward interception and then the Jimmy Ward pick 6. Yeah, this was an awesome game. I remember coming home off work, and I was just completely blown away at the 49ers' response to the previous week. Jimmy was 15 for 19, 182 yards and 2 touchdowns, quarterback rating of 96.6. Meanwhile, Matt Stafford was 26 for 41, 243 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks with a quarterback rating of 37.2. So this was definitely the game where they got it back on track. Elijah Mitchell, 27 carries for 91 yards. Deebo Samuel, I believe this is kind of the first time we saw him in the backfield. 5 carries, 36 yards. He also had 5 receptions for 97 yards. So this was the awesome game. And it was a Monday night as well.
The next 2 weeks were expected wins. They put up pretty convincing win over the Jaguars, 30-10. Everybody played pretty well. They made Trevor Lawrence look out of his depth. The next week they won 34-26 over the Vikings.
Good game.
Really, this was a good game. It was a nice back and forth affair that the 49ers were able to pull out. It was really good. But then it leads us into another in-division loss to the Seattle Seahawks, 30-23, when it looked like Seattle was at, this was Russell Wilson coming back. He wasn't yet back in form from that finger injury or the thumb injury. And, this was a game where the 49ers could have taken advantage. And this is something that, we'll talk about in our expectations for next year, but you have to win these type of division games, and they just didn't get it done. This was another disappointing one. And I think that we were all starting to worry about it at this point. What happens? Where do they go from here? They're starting to look up in the standings at people. And it's like, I don't know. You're sitting here you're sitting here with this record, and it's not good enough.
6-6.
Yeah. The next week was a pretty thrilling game between the AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals and the 49ers. Goes to overtime. They were able to outlast Joe Burrow and get a victory. It was a harder fought game than anybody would have predicted at the beginning of the season. It was a hell of a game.
Yeah. We did not pick the Niners to win this game at all.
No.
They won. Jimmy threw it 41 times and they won, which is rare.
Yeah. Right. And no picks, which is rare.
No Elijah Mitchell.
Right.
And they got the
Jeff
job
Wilson
done
Jr. and Deebo Samuel carrying the load. This was one of those crazy Kittle games where he had 13 catches, 151 yards, and a touchdown. And despite the fact that Joe Burrow was 25 of 34 with 348 and 2 touchdowns, they were able to somehow really take advantage of certain things and really put a hurting on the Bengals. I think they had like something like 4.5 or 5 sacks in this game of Joe Burrow. So it was another one where, the 49ers, they just, they were able to limit some of the things that they wanted to do. It was bend don't break a lot of the time, and this was another example of that.
Also, the Bengals had 4 fumbles, lost 2 of them, which was huge. The 49ers were able to
because up until that point, the
capitalize.
49ers had not been a team that was great at turning the ball over in terms of turning the other team over. And this kind of started a change, right? Where they started getting, hey, they did get another fumble. Oh, they just picked the ball off or whatever, right? Because outside of the Rams game where Ward had miraculously had 2 picks in one game of Matthew Stafford, it was just like, it was pretty slim pickings, and the 49ers were near the bottom of the league in turnover differential.
Yep. Then the following week was a blowout against the Falcons at home. We don't really need to go into much in that game. This game, the eve of Christmas Eve, Thursday Night Football, the last Thursday night game of the year against the Tennessee Titans. This was a tough game.
This was my last straw with Jimmy Garoppolo because the picks that he threw against Seattle were bad enough, right? Dropping it into Bobby Wagner's lap, completely overshooting a receiver. Those were bad enough. These picks in this game were so crippling. It was a must-win game the 49ers were 8-6 before this game, in control of their own destiny. Tennessee did not have Derrick Henry, right? They really didn't have any rushing attack of any type whatsoever, right? Ryan Tannehill averaged less than 10 yards, per attempt or whatever. He had 29 attempts for 209 yards. So really, he's at like 5 yards an attempt. But they let A.J. Brown get loose for 11 catches, 145 yards and a touchdown, and Jimmy Garoppolo with just some back-breaking interceptions to the point where I think that even some of his most staunch defenders, minus David Lombardi, who can't help himself, I think a lot of the people kind of jumped the ship on this one and were ready to see something else. And, we would get something else the next week, but like this was a game that was straight up deflating. The 49ers outgained them by over 100 yards. They won the time of possession. The turnover battle was what ended up being the difference. And this felt like it was going to be the end of the season. And I think that this was the most glaring, outside of the Super Bowl, this was the most glaring black mark on Jimmy Garoppolo's record as 49ers quarterback.
100%, especially because the way that first drive went, 9 plays, 75 yards, 5 minutes, march down the field, get a touchdown. I'm like, oh, because at the time the Tennessee Titans were number 1 seed, if I remember correctly, in the AFC. And they came out with Jimmy passing on that first drive, and he looked good. He looked on target. He looked precise. And then that second drive, more of the same after the Titans go 6 plays and punt. The Niners get all the way down to 1st and goal at the 9, 2nd goal after a 1-yard run. Jimmy Garoppolo throws it to a blanketed George Kittle, who is completely covered by Janoris Jenkins, or Jack Rabbit Jenkins. I think he actually changed his name, but completely covered. There's absolutely no reason to throw this ball. At no point was George Kittle open, and I think at that point killed all the momentum. The 49ers had a chance to go up 2 scores, 14-0, at the very least 10-0. And instead, the Titans got the ball. So,
and by the way, this was Jimmy played a fairly clean game against the Falcons, but this Tennessee game was the first game that Jimmy would start, and he would have at least 1 interception in every single other game that he started, including the playoffs for the rest of the season. This was just the beginning of the end for him as the quarterback. Ugly loss. And the thing that came out of it was that he ended up with that thumb injury, right?
Yep.
So the very next week, we get to see Trey Lance get his second start against the Houston Texans, and he didn't disappoint. Not me, anyway. I thought he played a pretty good game. He did have an interception. That was a pretty bad throw. it was a pretty bad throw. There's no getting around it. But he cleaned it up. He was 16 of 23 for 249 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had he had a few absolutely gorgeous throws. He had a nice rollout to Elijah Mitchell that looked really good down in the red zone. Elijah Mitchell had 21 carries for 119 yards. And, this was just a really nice game for the 49ers. It was a nice get back on track and wash that disgusting loss out of your mouth. Once again, they doubled the yardage that Houston was able to get. They actually lost time of possession, but it was because they were moving down the field so quickly with Trey Lance. They had 61 plays, but I mean, they had so many different drives, and it just seemed like they were able to move the ball in a way that sometimes Jimmy Garoppolo was not able to. And the real key thing was that Trey Lance looked pretty bad in the first half, and we were all like, "Oh God, what's going to happen?" But they came out with adjustments. Houston was up 7-3 at halftime, and they came back out and outscored them 20-0. So they made adjustments. Trey Lance showed that he has grit and was able to overcome a lot of the expectation that was heaped upon him. And he did a great job. He did a really good job in a must-win game because at this point, the 49ers were 8-7 and didn't control their own destiny. They had to keep up with everybody. So by winning this game over an imminently beatable Texans team, they were able to kind of keep their playoff hopes alive.
Also, you touched on it earlier. Brandon Ayuk and Trey Lance having that kind of chemistry. Yeah. Brandon Ayuk finished the game 4 receptions, 94 yards with a long of 43. And he tied with Deebo for the most targets with 6. And Deebo finished with 3 receptions for 63 yards, long of 45, which was that touchdown. And I agree with you. What we saw from the first half
touchdown was sweet too, by the way. That touchdown pass was sweet.
Something we rarely see as Niners fans. That
he threw that from the opposite hash.
Yeah.
Outside the numbers, like 50 yards downfield. It was great.
I guarantee Kyle Shanahan was like, internally screaming in his head, like, oh my God, I finally have a guy that can do it. Yeah. So this all set the 49ers up for a week 18 showdown in LA against the Rams with a win and get in scenario. I'm sure you all remember it was just a few weeks ago, but still looking back on it. And this game, I don't think I've ever been as pissed off as I was in the first half of this game because I thought this fell on coaching. I thought they came out completely flat. They looked like completely unprepared. They had no idea what they were expecting and what they were supposed to do. And it was evident in how they came out. And they came out down 17-0, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah.
17-0 in the first half. The Rams were unstoppable. And then second half comes out. The 49ers, going into the end of halftime, they get the field goal, which is something. Give them credit. And then come out with that drive to start the second half, 7 plays, 75 yards, took 4.5 minutes. And that was with the Deebo Samuel around the edge up for the touchdown. And all of a sudden it's a 7-point game. It's 10-17. Were you as excited as I was at this point? I'm like,
I was there.
That's right.
Yeah, I went from the lowest of lows, like to the point where I was cursing at Jimmy. He had one interception where he got hit and the ball floated. He threw another one, triple coverage to Kittle later in the game. It looked like, for different points of this game, it looked like Jimmy and Matthew Stafford were playing hot potato with the W, and neither one of them wanted to hold on to it. They kept trying to give it back and forth to each other. But this game, like you said, I went from being just so pissed off, like I was in the Tennessee game, right? And then they start storming back, and you're like, hold on a second. Yeah. And then it turns into, the most exciting 49ers game that I can remember in a long time. This was absolutely just one of those games where it was just like so crazy. The 49ers are able to go down and score a field goal, and then rookie Ambry Thomas gets his first pick to seal the deal. And it was jubilation. I can't describe it any other way. This to me, even more so than the playoff games, this to me was the high point of the 49ers season. This was where I was like the most stoked to be a part of the season. And that could have been because I was at the game. But I think that it was more so because that once they won this, it was like, okay, you're in the dance. Anything can happen at this point, right? All you have to do is get there, and you never know. But to go into another team's house with the amount of 49er fans that were there and pull this off, it was fantastic.
It was, yeah, amazing to watch. I forget you were at the game, which is even crazier.
Yeah.
But the Niners just completely stormed back. And I got to give Jimmy credit because he was making some tough throws, fitting the ball into small windows, and he led the 49ers back. And we've heard players like Juice, players like George, players like Deebo kind of come out and say, like, we know when Jimmy's in the huddle, there's that kind of sense of calm that he brings, which some fans might laugh at because of what he does with the ball sometimes. But I think this game is a perfect example of why they feel that way, because they know they have a shot. They have a shot. I mean, I'm watching the Cool Under Pressure, documentary with Joe Montana right now on Peacock, and that's exactly how that team felt. They could be down 4 scores with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
I meant to ask, is that a series or is it just a movie?
It's a docuseries, so there's 6 episodes.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I'm on the last one. I haven't finished it yet, but that team, they felt completely comfortable being down 4 or 5 scores, knowing that Joe Montana would be able to bring them back. And that was this game. The 49ers somehow came back. I mean, it was 17-3 at half, and going into the fourth quarter, it was 17-24 Rams. They had outscored them 17-7 in the entire second half. And that last drive was just magical. If I remember Jimmy Garoppolo for anything, it's probably going to be that last drive.
And here's the other thing. This was Juwan Jennings' come-out party as that third wide receiver, that reliable guy. He had 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. And this was a day, I mean, Ayuk with 107, Deebo with 95, Jennings with 94. This was like the potential of the offense unleashed, and you just realize this, because even with the turnovers, right, I realized, man, the defense is really good. The offense, if it can limit its turnovers with these weapons, they can be really, really dangerous. And so this was why it was just like, this is the high point of my season. If anything else happens, I was like, even if they lose in the first round of the playoffs, it was worth it just for this game alone. And it was just incredible.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we get the Dallas game. Where the 49ers, for the first part of it, just straight up dominated. I mean, after that first drive, they just marched right down the field and scored.
Yeah.
And it looked so easy. And they were up 16-7 at halftime, and it looked like, all right, everything's looking good. But it was kind of the opposite of the Rams game, where it was just like, it looked like they took their foot off the gas, right? And Jimmy goes from a performance where he has 316 yards, right? And he had the 2 picks, right? That's fine. But 316 yards to 172, no touchdowns, and another just very poor interception.
Horrible interception. Also, this is the game where he suffered the shoulder injury.
Yeah.
Was it throwing? No, it wasn't throwing the interception. It was just throwing on
taking a sack.
Yeah, that's right.
Because he was worried about the thumb, and then he tried to, brace himself, and he injured his shoulder. But yeah, and this was the first where I started looking at the 49ers seeming inability to really convert consistently on third down. You see a lot of games where they're like 6 of 13 or like 5 of 14 or like whatever. This was just another series of events. They dominated time of possession. They had the ball for almost 34 minutes. They outgained the Cowboys. They outrushed the Cowboys by double. But this game got way too close. And if it's not for an absolutely boneheaded call, right? And I know people will blame the refs, but you're running a quarterback draw with 14 seconds and no timeouts. If he gets down 3 seconds earlier, right, takes 5 yards less, just go down, right? You have a chance to spike the ball within end zone, and it could be completely different.
Yeah.
Beyond that, even doing that play is silly because they just gashed the 49ers for like 36 yards in 2 plays.
Yeah, they had just gone down the field really quickly.
Down the field.
And adding to your point, why do you think the defense left the middle of the field wide open?
Right.
Because of that.
You to do that.
Yes. Never do what the other team's asking you to do. Never. Right. Terrible call. Exactly. Josh Hudson says it here. Terrible call by Dallas.
And I'm telling you guys right now, Sean Payton might not coach this year, and they might have given the vote of confidence to Mike McCarthy, but you better believe Sean Payton is going to be the coach of the Dallas Cowboys after this next season. It's going to go back to plays like this.
Yeah, the fact that it even was a discussion whether McCarthy would come back, and it took like a week after this loss for Jerry Jones to just confirm that, I think speaks for itself.
I think
This
it
is
speaks to a
also
lot of why Kellen Moore is not going to get a head coaching job this cycle either.
that as well. Yeah. This is also a game where the Niners had 5 sacks, which was the
Yep.
second in a row that they finished with 5 sacks. The defensive line and D'Amico Ryan's defense was feasting. And this is when we started to hear about D'Amico Ryan's now getting head coaching opportunities because of what his defense has done, particularly towards the end of the season and now in the playoffs. So they win this 23-17 on that last second complete mind blunder by the Dallas Cowboys. And then we go to Green Bay.
Yep.
We go to Green Bay. Nobody thought the 49ers were winning this one. Everybody's saying this is a different Aaron Rodgers. Well, in the media.
Yeah, for sure.
Nobody's thinking that. They're saying this is a different Aaron Rodgers. And this is a complete snowy, cold. It's negative degrees.
Yeah, mess.
Defensive slugfest.
Right. And the 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo still finds a way to throw one of the ugliest picks you'll ever see. Yeah. Where George Kittle is running towards the sideline, and Jimmy thinks that he has the arm to get it there before the safety, who's watching Jimmy the entire time, as Jimmy is on the run, can make it over there to make the play. It's one of those things where, like, Jimmy escapes a sack, and same thing happened in the Rams game, where Jimmy escapes a sack, right, rolls out, gets out of trouble, and is looking down the field, and I'm just like, throw it away.
Yeah.
Throw it away.
Yeah.
He's not going to throw it away. Oh, God. He's not going to throw it away. He's not throwing it there, is he? Oh, no, he threw it. Oh, pick. Okay. And it's just, again, it was immediately flashback to the Tennessee game. I'm like, and the Rams game. It's like, that's now the third pick that Jimmy's thrown in the red zone as the 49ers are going down to get points in a crucial spot. And at that point, especially after that first drive with the Packers, I was like, man, if Jimmy's going to keep doing this, we're in trouble. And they go into halftime 7-0. And then again, just as they've done most of the season, second half adjustments. And for whatever reason, Aaron Rodgers just puckered up, man. He got tight, started making mistakes. At one point, I can't remember which corner it was. I think it was Dante Johnson got hurt.
Yep.
And they had to bring in Josh Norman. And the first play, they go after Josh Norman, who's gripping and grabbing like he always does, but actually got beat by Devontae Adams. And Rodgers just missed him by like 4 yards.
Yep.
And it just turned into this crazy thing. The 49ers had already blocked a field goal to keep Green Bay from getting more points. And it was a defensive slugfest. The 49ers couldn't get anything going. Elijah Mitchell wasn't running well. Deebo wasn't running well. Jimmy wasn't throwing. He finished 11 of 19 for 131 and a pick, which is horrendous. I mean, that's terrible. That's Tebow territory.
Yeah.
But then, a third down stop deep in Green Bay territory. Jordan Willis blocks the punt, goes 50 yards in the air, right? And by happenstance, all of the Green Bay players turn left, all of the 49er players turn right, and it lands 5 yards in front of Talanoa Hufanga, who scoops it up and scores. And we're looking at a tie ball game.
This was wild, man.
Wild.
I think Grant Cohn said it best. Divine intervention. The arm of God came down from heaven and blocked that punt. Honestly, I mean, the way the 49er special teams have been performing all year, and you were going to tell me they're going to block a field goal and block a punt and return it for a touchdown in this game.
It took a team who have worse special teams than the 49ers to really, kind of figure out that whole thing. And it was insane. And, then it's just like, oh man, it's Rodgers time. I don't know. And the 49ers get the ball back with, I believe, like 4 minutes and change.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, Jimmy Garoppolo is like, no, I think I'm going to make a couple of good throws.
Yeah.
Right. He hits George Kittle over the middle. He's got he's got a couple of other throws. I think there was a critical third down to Jawan Jennings, who, it was his only catch of the game, and it was for a first down. And then Robbie Gould, who had the audacity. Okay, go ahead.
Before that, the ballsy 3rd and 7 call where Kyle hands it off to Deebo. It was a pass.
Yeah.
He called a timeout, switched it to a run.
Yeah.
And Deebo, who shouldn't have gotten more than 4 or 5 yards, somehow manages to fight forward and get about 9.
Yeah. And he kind of like blew himself up on that play too.
He limped off. He immediately limped off on one leg, hopped off the field.
Yeah.
And a couple of plays later, you could take it over now. Robbie Gold
Yeah,
comes
Robbie
out.
Gould comes out, who before the game had the audacity to practice his field goal kicks over the Packers as they were being introduced. And this is after he had, I believe he had kicked over the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. Goes out there in the freezing cold. Robbie Gould, whose leg is not exactly supple and strong, let's say, hits a 45-yarder in a terrible winter storm and terrible snowing conditions that got worse as the game went on. And the 49ers shocked the Packers. But I mean, unfortunately, that would be like the last real positive moment of the season. As we all saw in the NFC Championship game, the 49ers came up short. Once again, it was a Jimmy Garoppolo game where he had a terrible interception, a couple of near interceptions. I knew the 49ers were in trouble on the first drive when he overthrew Kittle wide open up the seam.
Yep.
And I was like, because we said it before the game. It was like, Jimmy's due for a really good game, right?
We all thought so.
Right.
Thought so.
Not really.
No.
Not really.
He finished the games.
You look at the stat sheet, it looks fine. He was 16 of 30, which isn't great completion percentage, but you're like, oh, 232 and 2 touchdowns. Well, one of those was a screen pass to Deebo, who took it 44 yards. So you take that one out, and Jimmy Garoppolo had just another very, very you take that one out, he's 15 of 29 for like 190 yards.
Yep.
One touchdown, one pick. And it's just like, okay.
Yeah. And the defense could not get off the field to save their lives, specifically on third downs. They couldn't get off the field.
Yeah, they couldn't. The Rams were 11 of 18 on third down.
We talked about this before the game with our whole crew. If the 49ers could win with Cooper Kupp having a big game, we all said yes, but only they have to limit everyone else. You can live with Cooper Kupp beating you, but not with OBJ, Van Jefferson, etc.
Right. Well, and OBJ went off too, and Cooper Kupp still went off.
Cooper Kupp had 11 for 142 and 2 touchdowns. OBJ had 9 for 113. Yep. And Blanton, the damn backup tight end, had 5 for 57.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Right, because Tyler Higbee goes down. Higbee got injured real early.
Early in the game.
Yeah, and here's the thing. The 49ers actually had more yards per play than the Rams, but the Rams possessed the ball for 35 minutes and 39 seconds and ran 76 offensive plays. They ended up winning by 3. And, beyond the Jimmy thing, it was still in 49ers control. I know everybody wants to get rid of Tart now because he dropped that interception. No doubt it was a crusher.
They would have gone 3 and out. The way the offense was moving the ball, there's no.
But it would have ate up more clock.
It would have.
Yeah, it was that switched momentum big time, and it just the microcosm of the 49ers season. Beyond, I thought JT O'Sullivan talked about this in quarterback school. When Jimmy rolled out to the right and almost threw that pick to Jalen Ramsey. On the sideline,
who somehow dropped it.
If you watch, who somehow dropped it. Well, he dropped it earlier one to Deebo too when Jimmy tried to throw it back across his body. But this one was to the sideline where he was trying to, I believe, he was trying to hit Deebo again. Mm-hmm. But when you watch the behind the quarterback angle of it, you see Jawan Jennings leak behind the defense and was wide open for 6, and Jimmy could not get out of his tunnel vision. It was just a microcosm of Jimmy. And then that last drive was just pathetic.
It was one of the worst. One of the worst
closing drive. It's a minute 45 left. You're like, okay, they got a chance. They can go down the field. And it ends with another Jimmy Garoppolo trying to escape a sack, throws the ball over his shoulder, and it's high, and the running back tips it. It gets picked off. At that point, I don't even know what happened. I turned off the game. I couldn't watch it anymore.
I turned it off. I was sick. Sick.
And again, for as much as and I agree with Itchy 95 who says Tart didn't lose that game though. For as much as Tart is going to, and he came out and said that's on me, put it on me, whatever. This was a microcosm. This was a perfect Jimmy Garoppolo game to demonstrate why the 49ers needed to move on. It just,
it sucked, man. It was a tough
Josh Hudson
loss.
said the O-line was terrible. There were a couple of miscommunication plays, particularly where they all ran into each other. But in terms of pass pro, Jimmy wasn't sacked. He was pressured, but he was not sacked. And it was one of those where they had just come out and just wrecked this team on offense before.
Yeah.
And you know what the formula is. And this was why we say don't just line up Deebo Samuel in the backfield and hand him the ball. It was very unimaginative offensive play calling at first. There was the 4th and 2 that Kyle didn't go for. There was just a bunch of things that happened. And this was just disappointing. And it felt like from the beginning of the game that it was not the 49ers day.
No. The Niners finished with 20 carries for 50 yards rushing. The longest rush of the day was 9 yards. That's not winning formula. It just isn't. And we saw what happened. What happened. And even with all that said, though, it took the Rams a last-second field goal to win. So it is what it is. It's really fitting. Yeah, Joey says last 2 drives, Jimmy went 1 for 6 for -3 yards and that horrendous pick.
Yeah.
Also, Deebo Samuel's last touch came at 14 minutes in the 4th quarter when he ran for a first down. That was it. Last touch. 2 weeks ago, even 3 weeks ago, or excuse me, the last 2 weeks, I should say, Green Bay and then Dallas, you put the ball in Deebo's hands to close out the games. This week, apparently not. So
absolutely.
You live by the Jimmy, you die by the Jimmy.
Yeah. And now, the Jimmy Garoppolo era is dead in San Francisco. So we're going to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo. It's a disappointing end, I think. But overall, I would say it was a successful season simply because I didn't feel like after that horrendous loss to the Cardinals that the 49ers were going to do anything.
Yep. From 3-5 to the three points away from going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And honestly, I said this before and I firmly believe this. The loss still hurts right now, but whoever loses the Super Bowl on Sunday, that's the only loser of the season that people are going to remember. Yeah. They're never going to remember this 49ers Rams game. They're never going to talk about it. It's going to be one of those things that just disappears into the ether, but everybody remembers who lost the Super Bowl. If I told you, what's the biggest margin of victory in a Super Bowl, who lost that game, you'd be like, oh, the Broncos lost that game, it was 55-10. Or, Eli Manning won his Super Bowls. Who did he beat? Oh, he beat the Patriots both times. What's the worst loss in Super Bowl history? Oh, a 28-3 Atlanta Falcons gave up the lead. Everybody remembers that. Can you tell me who the Falcons beat in the NFC Championship game to get to the Super Bowl? Probably not. Right? You don't remember. So from that regard, it's going to sting a little less as time goes on. And we get to move into the Trey Lance era. So that's going to be an exciting time. So overall, I thought it was really good. Zach, let's move on to our offensive and defensive team MVPs, and then we'll get out of here. We've been going almost 2 hours, my man.
I think we both have the same. Obviously, Deebo Samuel.
Okay, yeah, it's Deebo Samuel. I mean, easy.
Ridiculous.
2,000 yards from scrimmage. I mean,
yeah,
excellent.
Insane year. What he did for the 49ers was unheard of, unfathomable at the beginning of the year. And now there's teams all across the league trying to find their own version of Deebo Samuel, which they're not going to do, what we talked about earlier.
Absolutely.
Defensive.
Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
Nick Bosa. 15.5 sacks, tied for the league lead in tackles for loss. I think it was like 26 or 27. Yeah. A couple of forced fumbles. I mean, he just wreaked havoc. Despite being constantly double and triple teamed, he was amazing. If he's not comeback player of the year, what are they doing?
Apparently,
I don't think he'll get defensive player of the year because I think that you can look at somebody like TJ Watt and really make a case for him. You can make a case. I mean, even somebody like a Micah Parsons, you can make a case for him as well. So
before we wrap up,
yeah,
if the 49ers made the Super Bowl, the version of the team that we saw over the last month, does that team beat this Bengals?
It would be tough.
I think the way Jimmy had been playing, no.
Yeah, I don't think so either. They you're looking at, Thomas is a little bit better, but it's not like they weren't giving up any points. They struggled with top-notch wide receivers all year.
And the Bengals have 3.
Right, and it speaks to the weakness of the secondary. I think it would have been hard. Yeah, I think it would have been really, really hard. You just hope that, they played an overtime game earlier in the season. You just hope that leaky offensive line for the Bengals would give up enough sacks to disrupt Joe Burrow. But that dude is like calm under pressure. So with Jimmy playing the way that he did in the playoffs, it would be extremely hard for me to see that. And the Bengals are a good run defense. So you're asking Jimmy Garoppolo to carry you.
Yeah, I agree. I rewatched the Bengals game the other night. Like I said, I've kind of been rewatching all.
Oh wait,
the
real
wins.
quick, Joey, don't worry. Both 3 sacks and a forced fumble. Guess what? That's my defensive MVP prediction for Week 1 next season, my friend. It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen.
It's
But
gonna happen.
Rewatching that Bengals game, Jimmy was 27 for 41, nearly 300 yards, 296, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. The no interceptions is key. And over the last month of the season, he couldn't prove to not turn the ball over.
No, from the Tennessee game on, he did not start a game where he didn't throw a pick.
So I don't think that this team beats this Bengals team if they would have made it. So it would have just stung even more. I'm kind of glad they just
I don't know that
out
this
in the
Rams
championship
team
game.
can beat this Bengals team. I think this Bengals team feels like a team of destiny.
Look, I said this in the recap show. Everything that was special about the Niners this season can be said about the Bengals.
Yeah.
I mean, they beat the Chiefs. They beat the Titans. Coming back from both, it's just wild what they were able to do this year. I think it's their year. I don't know. Some years you could just feel it, and it feels like their year. But
Same.
All right, I think that's going to wrap this episode up. Like Matt said, we're almost going on 2 hours.
Yeah.
But we got
real quickly. I don't even think we have to say it right. Who's your rookie of the year? Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah. Almost 1,000 yards rushing.
Yeah. Shout out, honorable mention to Ambry Thomas, most improved rookie over the course of the year for sure. I'm still most excited about Trey Lance. We'll see him next year, but I mean, listen, it was a great season overall. Take us home, Zach.
Yeah, guys, with that said, hit like, hit subscribe. We appreciate you tuning into this episode of the Running Gold Standard podcast. We got some big things coming to you this offseason. Make sure you're a part of it. Hit subscribe. We're trying to reach 2,000 subscribers so we can give away a 49ers jersey. We're like 60 away. I don't know. Hit subscribe. Help us out.
Absolutely. We'll be bringing you guys more content probably the week after the Super Bowl. We're going to take ourselves a little well-deserved break from the season, but we love having you here. Thank you as always for joining us. So for 2022 and beyond, signing out of this season, until next time, go Niners.